Very warm welcome to you all to the 4th annual Brunel Social Work and the Body Day. The COVID pandemic forced us to spend much of the last 2 years separate from others and in different forms of isolation. It also greatly increased the number of hours each of us was already spending looking at screens. These computer, phone, or TV screens bombarded us with human images, often enhanced and polished by computer technology. Blemishes, wrinkles, flabby tummies, and more are all removed and glossed over. The accumulated result of this bombardment is that most of us live in bodies we see as insufficient and lacking. We are also flooded by a growing number of products, treatments, and procedures which are meant to fix our bodies and bring them closer to what they should be, in inverted commas. Just being in our bodies has become a rare thing. The impact of this state of affairs and its implications to social workers and the people we work with is the topic of today's event. We are aware that from looking at the program, one might conclude that body image is only a women's issue, but this would clearly be a misjudgment. If anything, might just tell us about the kinds of topics real men are not meant to be talking about. Personally, I don't mind sharing with you the fact that only in my late 40s was I able to stop buying shirts that were 2 sizes bigger than my actual size, because I always wanted to look bigger, better built. And I know that I'm far from being the only man having such concerns. I hope we will also hear about such issues from our different speakers today. In planning this day, I was fortunate to be supported by 2 of our students, Shuai Jiang and Chi Timuri, and I want to express my thanks to them. I would also like to extend my thanks to Thomas Ryan and anyone else who supported this event. I hope that you all saw the program. We have 3 sessions during the first part of the day. After the second session, we will have a short break before the third session. This will then follow by a lunch break. We will come back from the lunch at 2 p.m. for the last 2 sessions. We are recording this session and we plan to make the recording available later. My name is Yohai Hakak and I'm a senior lecturer in social work. Our first 2 presenters are Katrina Jenkins and Tyra Mensah from the Mental Health Foundation. Katrina is the foundation's programs manager for families, children, and young people's programs. She leads on targeted programs which address the need of individuals who are most at risk of poor mental health outcomes. With a drive to build community capacity tailored to local need through co-creation, Katrina develops innovative and evidence-based solutions in public mental health. Taking a preventative approach to all the Foundation's programs, Katrina seeks to enable individuals and communities to address the underlying factors that contribute to mental ill health. Tyra Mensah is a Mental Health Foundation young leader She's passionate about matters relating to mental health and well-being. Tyra is also currently undertaking a placement with a mental health foundation as a programs trainee with the families, children, and young people's team. She will speak about what went into producing content targeted at younger audiences for the Mind Over Mirror campaign, and she will be specifically sharing her personal story and developing positive body image. Katrina and Tyra, it's over to you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I'm Katrina. As Yohai mentioned, I work in our families, children, and young people's programs team. The Mental Health Foundation works across the life course, and my work focuses specifically on younger audiences and families. And I'll be speaking alongside Tyra, who will come in and introduce herself later on in this presentation. So I want to be talking to you about the Mental Health Foundation's work in relation to the theme of body image, and start by giving you a brief overview on how the foundation works using a multi-pronged approach across all of our programs to address at the individual, community, and policy or societal level. So the Mental Health Foundation works across a number of programs and puts our research and programs into practice. The foundation takes a preventative approach across all of our programs, and our vision is for a world with good mental health for all. As I mentioned, we work across the life course from later life and people in care homes or care settings through to infancy and pregnancy. In addition, we are a strong research and evaluation team, produce reports year on year as part of the annual Mental Health Awareness Week. And you can see here our report titled How We Think and Feel About Our Bodies, which was our 2019 Mental Health Awareness Week themed report. And it was from that the bulk of our body image work has led out from at the Mental Health Foundation. So in addition, we run a range of influencing and campaigning projects. So for example, kindness, you might not see that as being a policy related or government concern, but actually kindness does matter in public policy. And that was our 2020 Mental Health Awareness Week theme. So we published a report and put out a series of actions that communities and individuals can be taking in order to bring kindness into how we consider mental health and address mental health. Now, in addition, we ran a campaign on image editing apps and how they impact mental health, particularly for younger audiences, and sought to improve and enhance regulation within that. So lastly, the Mental Health Foundation run public information and campaigning work, which really seeks to raise awareness within the public of some of the key learnings in policy and research that we've been producing throughout our other programs. So for example, notably, we run Behind the Books. Hashtag Behind the Books is something that runs every year for the last 2 years now during Freshers Week and seeks to highlight how students adjusting to university can be maintaining their mental health and managing that transition from home life into their adult study. So moving on to our body image work, the Mental Health Foundation carried out various pieces of work since our initial research report in 2019, How We Think and Feel About Our Bodies. And I'll be highlighting some of those key findings from that report shortly. But building on from that report, the Peer Education Project, which is a program run by the Mental Health Foundation, created a PSHCE lesson plan on body image that took some of the learning from the report and implemented it into a lesson plan for year 7s to learn from older students about how body image impacts their mental health and how they can promote a healthy body image within themselves and understand some of the factors that might be impacting their body image. In addition, a government report carried out by Mental Health Foundation Scotland called We Are More Than What We Look Like sought to implement changes in language policy and community-based approaches to enhancing body image. And really a key message there is that the best way to achieve positive change in relation to body image is to account for the whole person and not just thinking about our physicality, looking at it more as a psychological construct as part of our mental health. So more recently, we launched our Mind Over Mirror campaign that was launched this year, and Tyra and I will go into a bit more detail on that. So I won't go into too much information on that here. But throughout this time, the foundation's been carrying out ongoing policy influencing work. So for example, we were part of the group that pushed for more regulatory action in regards to Botox for underage adults or children, sort of teenagers, where before, if you were under 18, you could potentially access Botox. So the regulations on that have been tightened. And this is a key under-regulated substance. This is one of the things we've been campaigning for. And in addition, I've mentioned the image editing apps, and we've been calling for age restrictions to be placed on that because we understand that the research shows us that using these apps at a young age can impact how we view ourselves and our developing sense of self. So as you'll see, we use this kind of multi-strand approach throughout across our work in body image as well. Now, I think it's worth pausing here and just highlighting what do we mean by a healthy body image when we talk about it. I think there are many definitions, and it is a very subjective construct that we each hold for ourselves, but key themes do emerge from the research. Now, the foundation carried out a survey with the Open Network, which is a network of people across the UK called Opening Participation to Everyone Network. So OPEN is an acronym. And in that survey, we asked people what do they find works for them to promote healthy body image, and what do they feel and experience when they are experiencing a healthy body image. And some really strong themes came out around acceptance, appreciation, gratitude, and uniqueness. So for many, the idea of self-love or being very pleased with our physicality seemed very, very far-fetched or too far away for them to be able to reach. But the idea of acceptance and gratitude for the functionality of our bodies insofar as they are able to function was really something that felt achievable and something that would work for them to help promote a healthy body image and a healthy self. So I think this is important because we might struggle with reduced functionality or changes within our bodies throughout the life course, but we can continually strive for acceptance of our bodies. And as one participant in that survey said, a healthy body image is, quote, just being me. And I think that's a really key aspect a really key quote to highlight that sense of acceptance and just being within ourselves and being contented within that. So moving on now to the body image report and the work that we did there. This was part of our Mental Health Awareness Week activities for 2019. And for this Mental Health Awareness Week, we carried out a UK-wide survey, and that included over 4,500 adults and over 1,000 teenagers aged 13 to 19. And in addition to that survey, we carried out a literature review to understand comprehensively what the literature already tells us and the evidence base already gives us in relation to body image across key population groups and isolating the literature down into sections like that. And out of the back of that literature review and the survey, we produced some policy and industry level recommendations for change to enhance body image at a societal level. So some of the findings from that is that being unhappy with our appearance is really quite a common experience. And I think none of us would be surprised by that. But 1 in 5 people felt shame about their body image. And even more so, 1 in 3 felt down or low as a result of their body image or body image concerns. 1 in 3 felt anxious about their body image. And 1 in 3 felt depressed about their body image. So we can see that this is quite a large section of the population whose quality of life and day-to-day life is being affected by their body image. Crucially, over 1 in 8, so 13%, had said that they felt suicidal thoughts or feelings as a result of body image concerns. So this isn't something to be taken lightly. This emphasized to us why we really need to be actively addressing body image as part of our public mental health work and really embedding it across the ways that we think about how we conceptualize ourselves. So we do tend to think of this as a gendered issue, as Hyohai rightly mentioned right at the start of this presentation. And we do know women and girls are more affected than some body image concerns compared to boys and men. However, 1 in 10 boys have skipped a meal due to concerns about appearance, and steroid use is on the increase with boys and men. And some of this is not within the regulated market. So there are additional health risks as a result of this behavior. So we really do need to be careful not to neglect other less heard population groups within a key issue, even though a targeted approach might be useful when we're seeking to address body image concerns. So when we go to adolescents and teenagers' body image, we see a stronger effect and stronger impact on wider mental health and quality of life. It takes a particular hit with 13 to 19-year-olds, with 40% feeling worried, 31% feeling ashamed, and 37% feeling upset in regards to their body image. So again, we can see this day-to-day impact with young people going throughout their lives, feeling worried, ashamed, and upset as a result of their physical form and how they see themselves. It does lead us to then wonder, what are the influences on body image and why there is such a big impact on young people particularly, but across the population. So I've listed here some of the key factors that we know from the research do impact body image. But I think one thing is worth noting is that while these are, so relationships with family and friends, for example, can be really impactful on body image. This can be both a risk factor and a protective factor. So I think when we look at risk factors, it's important to also look at the other side and see the protective factors that we should be building up as a result of in order to mitigate some of the risks that we do know about. So we can see relationships with family and friends are a key risk factor, and how peers and family speak about bodies and appearance. And this really ties into interactivity on social media. So there's always been the impact of peers and family speaking about bodies and how that impacts body image. But now this impact can be enhanced potentially because young people are experiencing this both online and in the quote real world. This also applies to teasing and bullying and sexualized remarks, which seems to be more prevalent when we're looking at social media interactions. And then viewing idealized or unrealistic bodies does seem to be impacting how people see themselves and their own self-concept. There was one study in particular that showed that sexualized images of women impact the positive affect or reduce the positive affect experienced by younger girls. So there is something there about how we present women's bodies, and we may see the same thing when we look at men's bodies, but the study particularly looked at women and sexualized images of women. In addition, we see this perceived pressure to look a specific way as being something that impacts body image, and self-comparison to unrealistic ideals, and this leads to an internalization of ideals. Now, comparing oneself to unrealistic ideals and holding oneself as never good enough and internalizing those ideals, which were once only externally presented, that's how a shamed body is then created. And shame, as we know, is an experience we're all born with. We all are born with the capacity to feel shame, and it can be a useful and helpful function in the right context. But body shame can become unhelpful and internalized when we experience our physical selves as being wholly inadequate or fundamentally defective. And so once this shame is then internalized, even when we remove some of these external influences like teasing or bullying or sexualized remarks, even with the complete removal of those, that internalized view and perceived lack of self-worth is already part of our physical, sort of our internal construct. So in outlining these factors on influence on body image, I've made a distinction here between the external and internal influences on body image. That's a bit of an arbitrary distinction because really they, in practice, they do interact with each other to where our self-comparisons to unrealistic ideals impact how we view those external portrayals of unrealistic bodies, for example, on social media or in advertising. So it isn't just the external or just the internal, it's how they really interplay with each other that we then see this shamed body coming out and the internal constructs being formed, and in some cases at a very early age. So while those sort of factors do impact everyone, we're all impacted differently. And I think it's worth noting that certain groups are more affected by particular types of risk factors than other people. Just like with physical health outcomes, mental health outcomes are also impacting differently on different groups. Now, there's comparatively little research looking into the body image experiences of people with intellectual disabilities and neurodiversity. But where research has been carried out, we do see a greater risk of body dissatisfaction. There's also a greater risk of obesity in people with learning disabilities, and with the anti-obesity messages that can sometimes be put out as quite unhelpful in the language that's used, we can then see an interplay between a sort of external messaging and internal sense of self. There's also an increased risk of bullying and social isolation, which can compound body image concerns and low self-esteem in people in this group. So again, we see a greater risk of some of those external risk factors affecting some groups more than others. Now, for motor skills and coordination difficulties, frustrations with the functionality of the body can also further compound body image concerns. So functional and practical support to improve motor skills does seem to be effective in sort of mediating some of these challenges with the functional frustration of the body that can be experienced by people with some disabilities. In addition, medications for mental health problems can come with side effects, and long-term mental health conditions and poor physical health can also lead to this exacerbation of body image concerns. When we see people with illnesses that then lead to side effects of treatment, so for example, people experiencing cancer treatments can then lead to a dual effect of frustration with the functionality of the body, as well as a changing sense of external appearance, and leading to a need to revise internal view of self. And so that can lead to often profound and distressing body image concerns, in addition to the experience of having a life-threatening or long-term health condition. So key moments of transition like adolescence, menopause, and pregnancy do also appear to be incredibly impactful, and pregnancy and childbirth were actually highlighted by our 2021 survey as being the biggest impact on body image by women in our open survey. When we see that sort of key transition moment being combined with some other difficulties like a long-term health condition, we then see this dual effect. So for example, a teenager is already facing multiple changes to their physical and internalized sense of self. And then if we combine that with the transition of the experience of having diabetes or cancer and the treatment experience of that, the teenager is very likely to feel a double effect and a mismatch between their perceived reality and their internalized ideals, leading to profound body image concerns. So our higher risk groups are those that face multiple risk factors, as well as multiple experiences that can impact. And sexuality and gender also appears to be an impactful factor in body image, with some studies reporting an increased internalized athletic ideal in gay and bisexual men. So body image concerns seem to manifest as higher rates of eating disorders in gay and bisexual men relative to heterosexual men. So we do see, again, a need to tailor some of our programs to support individuals from certain groups more than from other groups, taking that targeted approach.
Cool.
Our survey also found a link between body image and ethnicity, and this is often entangled with cultural norms. So overall, our research review indicates that there are minimal differences between ethnicities and body image, and we actually see just as much variation within ethnic groups as we do between ethnic groups. But where small differences were identified, we do seem to see European ethnicities as having a poorer body image than their peers in other ethnic groups. So one study showed, for example, white British girls are more likely than their Black British peers to show disordered eating behaviors and express body image concerns. So this picture remained when we looked at males and other ethnicities. For example, one study that looked at Asian American men relative to Euro-American men. And so this led our report to look further and more deeply at the cultural norms that might be prevailing and examine how these might be impacting on internalized ideals and norms, and that therefore impacting body image. And when we did that, again, Euro-American cultures seem to show a higher rate of body image concerns, lower body satisfaction relative to non-Western cultures. Now, I do caveat this finding because I think saying non-Western cultures is such a painting with such a broad brush, and as we see within Euro and Euro-American cultures, we see a huge degree of nuance, many subcultures within that. And so I think in order to understand cultural influences, we need to be taking much more of a fine-tuned approach in understanding unique differences between cultures and within cultures, and how those norms might be impacting on internalized constructs, which can inform body image. And I think also, just to caveat all of this, while we do see some groups impacted differently and potentially more than other groups, that's not to take away from any group that is, any individual that is massively impacted by body image. And we can see from the earlier findings that this really does produce anxiety, depression, and quite a great degree of distress that impacts quality of life. So what can we do about it? We see these massive impacts from body image on mental health. Our 2019 report for Mental Health Awareness Week made some key recommendations that went across the individual level for individuals to take action, community level action, so school and home and media, and then policy level changes and changing at a societal level. So some of the key suggestions, that actions that individuals can take is listed here. So talking to trusted persons about struggles. Spring cleaning apps was a really useful one that actually came out as well when we spoke to young people about this and how they managed to mitigate some of the risks that can come about from social media. So unfollowing accounts that seem to be creating a negative feedback loop when we view them, or muting accounts that are having an unhelpful impact on our emotions and how we see ourselves was a really strong recommendation that came out. Doing a continuous self-audit of how is this making me feel was also something that was recommended by the research as being particularly important to help people understand and sort of self-explore the way that that interaction between external factors and internalized factors are interplaying with each other. Now, in addition, there was this point about role modeling healthy attitudes, and this is really about understanding that while we can be impacted by other people's comments and the wider societal attitudes about body image, similarly, we can be impacting others. So doing that kind of check on how we talk about our own bodies and our own attitudes towards body image, and recognizing that when we speak out these unhelpful attitudes, that it is also impacting the people around us. So trying to be part of the solution and in recognizing that problem there. And then similar to that is avoiding negative self-talk, that this sort of further emphasizes a negative feedback loop that many of us do have. And so checking that and interrupting it when it does occur and not speaking it out so that other people don't then start to mirror that same attitude and that same behavior was really important. And then lastly, it was around focusing on functionality and enjoyment as part of our enhanced body image and our working towards a healthy lifestyle. Now, building up a pattern of appreciation and acceptance and gratitude was really key to that. But similarly, it was understanding how we relate to exercise and healthy eating can be obviously very, very good for us, but these activities should foster a sense of enjoyment and self-care and increased functionality. So they shouldn't be appearance focused. That seems to be unhelpful when we use exercise and sort of healthy eating in a sort of appearance focused way, but really focusing on enjoyment and functionality. So eating foods that we enjoy and finding the enjoyment in healthy eating and learning new recipes, that seems to produce healthy outcomes for our body image. Whereas if we're doing it for specifically to change our appearance, then that can produce some unhelpful outcomes for people. So then when we look at actions in the community level, again, we see sort of schools being really key to that, and how schools highlight the importance of body image and also can recognize where some of those risk factors are being exacerbated within the school context. And of course, I'll highlight their PSHCE lessons as being really key within that, because the Mental Health Foundation has already devised a lesson plan, but there are other ways that this can be addressed. Since that initial launch of those lesson plans, we've since developed assemblies and other posters and things like that can go around schools and raise awareness of this as a normalized topic of conversation for people to recognize how body image impacts mental health. And similarly, within community spaces, it's really important to provide quality and evidence-based interventions which address body image. There are some drives towards, for example, obesity-targeted programs within the communities. It's vital that these take an informed approach, considering body image throughout all the curricular content that is put out there and how it's promoted to target audiences. Exercise and healthy eating programs are commonly delivered within community settings, and these must account for the immense value of promoting healthy body image as a means of enhancing overall health behaviors and moving towards healthy lifestyles. So lastly, actions at the policy and institutional level. We have had a great focus on increased regulatory action. So looking at, for example, online harms white paper was something that we were very much wanted to be a part of and we're pushing for. And this calls for regulation in social media in how younger audiences are using social media, but also how advertisements are being put out there on social media. So for example, Botox 2-for-1 parties are a thing, and they are advertised on Facebook, sometimes despite the fact that it is not technically within their within what Facebook would allow. So we are calling for people to report when they see things that are violating advertising standards authority, but also platform standards of how they should be used. So advertising regulation, I think, is really important because the uptake of cosmetic surgeries and non-surgical treatments is definitely increasing, and in younger age groups. So in one workshop, for example, a young woman told me that getting lip fillers before a night out is just like going out and getting your nails done. But of course, the risks of getting your nails done and the risks of injectables, toxins put into the lips is really quite different. But it's not necessarily seen that way because of how it's being advertised. So it's really important that we do address advertising regulation. Now, in addition, we call for training for frontline practitioners, whether that's in health and social care, or whether that's within the practitioners within the cosmetic industry. And that's a key strand of work that may be going forward increasingly within the foundation over the coming year. In addition, we focus on imagery and tone in our public campaigns, and we have a strong focus on co-production in how we put out our public campaigns, as you'll see when Tyra talks about the Mind Over Mirror campaign. And this is because some research suggests that how we present bodies and use and language use within some of these campaigns, while well-intentioned, can actually further exacerbate some of the challenges. So for example, we've heard about sexualized bodies impacting how women feel about themselves and young girls feeling about themselves. However, a lot of the body positivity campaigns do seem to show women that are less clothed. I did a little exercise with Tyra and a sort of experiment and said, Google certain key phrases like body positivity or body confidence into Google Images. And you do see image after image after image of women in bikinis or women that are barely clothed. And so there does seem to be a prevailing message of, if you want to be confident, you must sort of bare yourself to the public. And this isn't necessarily a helpful message that is actually enhancing body image. So we do need to be really careful in how we use imagery and language and tone within our public campaigns. So that effectively sums up some of our key findings and recommendations of the 2019 report. Moving forward now to 2020 and 2021, we developed our more recent Mind Over Mirror campaign. So our Mind Over Mirror campaign was a multi-strand campaign that addressed body image from the awareness that cosmetic treatments are increasingly taken up, and often by younger audiences, and also more vulnerable population groups who don't necessarily have the funds to engage with the level of self-care that's required in order for safe treatment. So Mind Over Mirror addressed the need for informed decision-making alongside body image awareness and policy-level action being recommended in order to reduce the physical and mental health risks of this increase in uptake of non-surgical cosmetic procedures and treatments. Now, it's worth noting that a third of UK adults said they felt so stressed about their body image that they were overwhelmed and, quote, unable to cope. So we see that there is a need for ongoing action and far more work in this space. Now, Mind Over Mirror was led by the Mental Health Foundation and supported by the British Beauty Council and supported by the Joint Council for Cosmetic Practitioners. The content was created in partnership with Leaders Unlocked, which Tyra will be exploring more about, and involving the Mhcf Young Leaders. So I'm going to hand over to Tyra now for her presentation on how she was involved as an Mhcf Young Leader in the creation of this content, and then later joining the Mental Health Foundation team as a programs trainee, and completed the campaign from the other side of the fence, so to speak, as a member of the Mhcf team. So over to you, Tyra.
Thank you, Katrina. Hi, everyone. So I'm Tyra, and as Katrina mentioned, I'm a Mhcf Young Leader, and I'm also a programs trainee with the Mental Health Foundation and that's been for about nearly 6 months, just under 6 months now. And today I will be speaking about targeted towards younger audiences for the Mental Health Foundation's Mind Over Mirror campaign, which includes a bit about my personal journey with body image and how it affected my mental health. So to give you a brief overview of how we produced the Mind Over Mirror social media campaign and the work that went into it, which was specifically targeted towards younger audiences, I will firstly share some background information about who the Mhcf Young Leaders are and how the Mental Health Foundation works with them to turn the important issues addressed in the body image report into an exciting campaign young people could engage with and relate to also. So who are the Mhcf Young Leaders? The Mhcf Young Leaders, who also, it stands for the Mental Health Foundation Young Leaders, are a diverse collective of young people from various backgrounds across the UK who are keen to influence the ways in which the mental health and well-being of others can be protected. The project, which the Mental Health Foundation runs in partnership with Leaders Unlocked, which is another social enterprise organization, enables young leaders and young people in their community who are also experts by experience to share their perspectives on topics relating to mental health in order to suitably shape the work the foundation produces. And therefore, by working alongside the Mhcf Young Leaders, the foundation can ensure our work reflects the diverse realities of young people in all stages of development and delivery. So to understand how the Mhcf Young Leaders informed the Mind Over Mirror campaign, it is important to recognize that the Mhcf Young Leaders played a vital role in co-producing their campaign with Mhcf. So in collaboration with them, Mhcf hosted a number of workshops surrounding body image, acceptance, and producing content for the foundation's social media pages. And it was interesting because before I actually joined Mhcf as a trainee, I was a part of the workshops as an Mhcf Young Leader before I joined the team. But during discussions, the young leaders were invited to share social media posts based on body image, which stood out to them in a positive way. So you can see some examples on the screen here of acne positivity, with people with acne smiling, because usually when you see adverts or people with acne in the media, they are frowning and they look sad. Body texture, so stretch marks, male representation of body image, and also a Twitter post here addressing the fact that body image tends to move in trends. So what's popular changes throughout time. And from these items, we discussed what body image content they had already seen and started to think about the gaps and what didn't exist. It was also essential that we acknowledged what would be beneficial for young people to see more of. So the following workshops gave the Mhcf Young Leaders the opportunity to inform this campaign's key messaging and how we could repurpose existing Mhcf content, that was centered around body image, and think about specifically what imagery the young leaders would like to be portrayed, and make sure that it is inclusive and representative. And to ensure this happened and this was achieved, the Mhcf Young Leaders shared ideas about what features and identities, the avatars and different icons and things in the campaign they thought should be embodied. So when our team at Mhcf worked with the graphic designer, the campaign was representative of all bodies. And the Mhcf Young Leaders were also involved in the finishing stages of the campaign. And before our team finalized any of the creative content produced, they had the opportunity to share their final thoughts. So here are the 3 key themes identified from the workshop notes, which were central to shaping the outcomes of this campaign. As initially, there were lots of ideas and points drawn from the Young Leaders workshops. So we needed to filter this down into a few clear pieces of content. The first theme identified and chosen related to cosmetic treatments and procedures. This theme was chosen to address the rise of surgical and non-surgical cosmetic procedures, especially in younger populations. This was also a theme that had very mixed opinions. Some young people voiced that everyone should learn to love their bodies and not feel the need to change anything about themselves, as it would essentially be prescribing to societal and social media pressures, which is also another theme that I will talk about. But then on the other hand, others voiced that body and skin positivity movements should not be judgmental regarding people's choice to go through non-surgical or surgical procedures, and should rather be more supportive and realistic by providing information that people can use to determine if a treatment is the right choice for them. And not accepting a person's decision for or against treatments would also be shaming them to want to feel confident in their own bodies. So the next theme we identified related to pressures, which were societal and came from social media. And this theme was chosen because throughout the workshops we hosted with the young leaders, young people emphasized the use of society and social media, making young people more vulnerable to developing a poor body image. And all genders raised concern that many social media posts promoted what an ideal body should look like due to the constant picture of perfection. And then lastly, the third theme we identified related to body textures, tones, and individuality. And it came out of the need for the conversation around body image to be shifted more towards what body textures includes, and shifting it away from the typical body size conversation, where focus is given towards how big or small and what shape a body has, because the young leaders discuss having repeatedly seen that conversation and seen those images before. And more specifically, the young leaders voiced the need to see something related to a body texture such as acne, eczema, stretch marks, birthmarks, psoriasis, cellulite, rosacea, and even hair texture. So to present the themes I just shared on the previous slide, we created a series called Mind Over Mirror to reflect each theme that had a connecting title to the campaign series. The first in the campaign series was the Feeling My Mind 5 top tips, as you can see here, which young people could use to help maintain a healthy sense of self and prevent themselves from developing a poor body image in a world where they feel societal and social media pressure to have a perfect or an ideal body. These tips were also a continuation of the work Mhcf did with the body image report. So the co-production workshops we had with Mhcf young leaders, we were able to adapt these recommendations previously outlined in the report in a way that was more suitable for younger audiences. So as you can see here, one of our tips is take a break from social media, build a positive feedback loop between you and your friends, which Katrina also touched on earlier. If you decide to go for treatment, check the facts first, take note of the accounts you follow and how they make you feel, make compliments based on personality and strengths rather than just looks. And to reach younger audiences, this was shared on our organic or the foundation's organic social media channels, so Twitter and Instagram. The next series in the campaign was the Mirror My Mind comic strip. This comic strip represented people from a range of backgrounds through illustrations to ensure it was inclusive as per the Mhcf Young Leaders request. And the aim of this comic strip was to make young people aware of the things they should consider before going to treatment in a non-judgmental way. To achieve this, we specifically produced 4 frames depicting a conversation between friends to highlight 4 considerations for young people to know when seeking non-surgical cosmetic procedures. And the considerations for each frame were also supported by figures that came from the Open Network. And the Open Network is a network that includes data from a national sample of UK adults. The first frame here on the slide addresses self-esteem, as 17.5% of people from our Open Network survey said that the main motivation for having treatment was to change how they felt about themselves. And 62.9% said it was a mixture of changing how they feel about themselves and also changing their appearance. The second frame here aims to encourage younger audiences to be more informed about possible cosmetic treatments, as 43.3% of adults in our survey felt uninformed about the risks and possible side effects of cosmetic treatments they had or were considering. And this relates closely to the third frame here, which encourages younger audiences to consider and take note of if the practitioner they possibly receive the treatment from or their desired treatment from is qualified, as 91% of people indicated that they believed it to be the case that cosmetic providers needed to be registered and insured, when in fact, for many non-surgical cosmetic treatments in the UK, they do not. Anyone can actually provide a treatment. I think Botox is one of them also. You don't actually need to be registered to do that. You can just take a short course and start injecting people with Botox. But lastly, the fourth frame aims to urge young people to be absolutely sure of their decision to have non-surgical cosmetic treatment, as 11.3% said they would make an instant decision to go through with a treatment. And though that's not necessarily a high percentage, it would be ideal if it were less. And lastly, to address the third theme, which we identified earlier in terms of body texture, I personally opened up about my experience with dealing with acne and how it affected my mental health via a personal blog piece, which was shared on the Mental Health Foundation's website. And I was motivated to share how I dealt with being dissatisfied with my skin and how I eventually overcame that. I was essentially facing my mirror, which is the title of this blog. So to give you all a glimpse of what that looked like for me, I will be reading my blog before handing back to Katrina. Feeling comfortable in my preteens. Teenagers sometimes have spots, and as a young teenager in school, this was something I experienced. It was never really a major concern for me since I recognized it was a part of puberty. So a couple spots here and there may have been different to my preteen spotless face, but it was still never drastic enough to worry me. Changes in my skin in my later teens. This all changed when I reached my later teenage years. As I continued to grow and my body continued to develop, I started to notice my skin increasingly change. My skin became more textured. I can pinpoint the exact moment I found out my skin had pores. Seems dramatic, but it truly was a revelation. I recall looking in the mirror and seeing what seemed like a few tiny holes on my nose. I'm pretty sure I thought I was developing some sort of illness. I remember Googling, I have tiny holes on my face, what are they? To find out they were pores. Awakening to self-consciousness about my skin. Realizing that my skin wasn't poreless like the skin I saw in the magazines, TV, and media wasn't the last thing my skin surprised me with. What would truly awaken my love-hate relationship with my skin was the day I woke up to look in the mirror and saw that I had acne. Again, I ignorantly didn't know it was acne then. I just remember feeling completely different about what I was looking at in the mirror. It wasn't the same as my usual adolescent breakouts of 1, 2, or 3 spots. This breakout was almost as if my skin had erupted with multiple boil-like spots that came through all at once. These spots were more colorful, a combination of pink, red, and white. They also happened to be more painful, not only physically, but emotionally. For the first time ever, I remember making my way to school being overly worried about my appearance and specifically what was on my face. The unwanted acne I had on my face introduced me to many other firsts. I received unwarranted comments about how to save my skin. I was increasingly unable to make eye contact with others. I hated taking pictures with friends or family. I never wanted to go out because I was too concerned about people looking at what was on my face. A major first for me was that this was the first time in my life I wanted to change myself, wanting to change the skin I was in. I desperately wanted to change the skin I was in. I would repeatedly ask my mum to take me to the doctor so I could be treated. although she said I was fine and continued to buy me different skincare products she swore would work. Until one day at the dinner table, I remember breaking down, crying, and saying how disgusting I thought I looked. Only then, I think my mum realized how much my acne was affecting me. My first doctor's consultation about my skin ended with a prescription for antibiotics. The antibiotics worked for the duration of the course, and I started to slowly feel better about myself during this time. But a while after finishing the course, my acne started to come back. By this time, I was in my last year of sixth form. Luckily, the little confidence I had managed to rebuild while taking antibiotics didn't completely disappear as soon as my acne reappeared. I think this was partly because I had developed a skincare routine that helped me manage my breakouts. I also think it was partly because I had seen more people with acne. And at my new sixth form, I became close friends with someone who related to my skin struggles. She and I supported each other as we would both aim to make each other feel good about ourselves, not realizing then that the way we spoke positively about one another should have also been the way we spoke positively and viewed ourselves. The eroding of my healthy body image again. Unfortunately, leaving sixth form and starting different universities away from familiar faces was the catalyst to eroding whatever healthy body image I had previously maintained. This was the second major time in my life I recall wanting to change the skin I was in. So in my second year of university, I found a skincare clinic in the city where I studied, which I thought would be the answer to all my skin issues. I justified the high amount of money they charge for cosmetic treatments as an investment and an opportunity to finally cure my acne. At the time, I didn't even tell my family this was something I was doing. I didn't realize how unhealthy my thoughts and perceptions of myself were. I just wanted to improve what I saw at the time as a flaw, wanting a cure at any cost. I paid for multiple sessions of facial acid peels. Cosmetic grade acid was applied on my face with the intent of clearing up my acne and fading the hyperpigmentation I had developed from previous breakouts. There was a recovery time required after each round of treatment, so I spent days avoiding the sun, not going into lectures, and even evading the library. This meant I was inadvertently consumed with my appearance, hoping to achieve perfect skin and build an ideal body image. Lo and behold, after months of treatment and most of the academic year, my acne remained uncured. Writing about my experience now has helped me to see how this experience likely affected my grades. My grades were the lowest in my second year. And upon reflection, I've also realized that I was hugely isolating myself from my friends and flatmates. Sadly, an academic year of isolating myself in my room, obsessing over my skin, and worrying about others seeing my face wasn't enough to tire my chase for clear skin. I went on to pay for another course of treatments. I hoped that this would be the last hurdle to finally achieve what I thought I needed. It was not. Like clockwork, my acne would reappear a short while after treatment. At this point in my journey of my skin, I began to realize this wasn't the solution for me. Don't get me wrong, I think there's no problem with having facial peels, but I was focused so much on the aesthetics of my body that I hadn't even addressed other factors that were possibly causing me to break out. What about the stress or pressure I was putting myself through? What about the hormonal changes my body was dealing with as a young woman? What about simply learning to love my skin? Finding acceptance over my skin. It took some time for me to get here, but I'm learning to be more accepting of my skin if I break out. It's simply how my skin responds sometimes, and I shouldn't feel ashamed. I have learned so much about myself throughout my journey with my skin. I do my best to think and speak kindly of myself as I would do for a friend. I know that I am not alone, and I can talk to a friend if my body image is affecting my life. My favorite takeaway from this journey is that I was introduced to the world of skincare. I've learned to indulge in skincare as a form of self-care and not self-sabotage. I'm no longer obsessed with trying to achieve an unrealistic image of poreless, one-tone, texture-free skin. My interest in skincare has motivated me to practice looking after myself, even during the times I felt unhappy in my skin. Whatever our textures, skin, hair, or any part of our body, we can journey towards accepting ourselves instead of wanting to be something else. And so that was my blog, and I'll be passing back over to Katrina.
Thank you, Tyra. It always moves me to hear your story, and it's just so relatable, I think, for so many people.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that with us today and kind of bringing the topic to life, because it really does. We do need to ground this in the real experience of day-to-day people like you and many others. So I'm going to talk very, very quickly, because I'm conscious of time, about some of the additional content that we launched as part of the Mind Over Mirror campaign. So Tyra presented a lot of the youth-focused or young adult-focused content that we co-created. And that really was the bulk and the main focus and the big success of the Mind Over Mirror campaign. But we did wrap that around with a wider messaging that was needed for others. So for example, we did a parenting for healthy body image guide that was tailored for parents to better understand how they can promote healthy body image in their teens and tweens. So parents of both boys and girls joined focus groups and rounds of feedback to present diverse cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds in relation to the topic and their experience of addressing this topic within their lives. Parents' input had focused primarily on key concerns and challenges that they faced in promoting a healthy body image at home. And they highlighted some of what seems to work to engage young people in open conversations. And we used that as the basis of this guide, along with some of the evidence base. So the parents indicated to us as well the types of imagery to avoid, like things that would be off-putting for them, and the format or layout of guidance that would enable them to engage successfully. So some tips for our imagery included not having sort of polished looking children in quotes, but also to show young people that, you know, what they accurately represent and what many of our young ones actually look like in terms of clothing style, hair and piercings and so on. There was a call for modesty in clothing made by some parents with religious backgrounds who felt they couldn't bring any content into their home, which portrayed sort of less clothed women. So we did need to be mindful of that and portray lots of different types of people within the guidance. So it wasn't just one culture being represented. So in light of all that, the following tips indicate the type of content that was covered in the Parenting for a Healthy Body Image guide. So the first one sort of highlights the fact that teens and tweens know all about filters, treatments, makeup angles and lighting. They know all about it, more than many parents do. So they are clued in on style and image enhancing techniques and how to get that shareable photo. So parents are not stuck with the task of informing our young ones that not all photos reflect reality. Young people already do know that. They do know that photos can be trick shots, and yet that is the world that many young people are growing up in now. So they do feel the pressure to play along at that game, even though they know it might be a bit of a game. So that can lead to what seems to be obsessing over image and what many parents recognize as body image concerns. So on that basis, these tips were created to address that. So the first one, compliments to the tween, just highlights the value of giving character-based compliments rather than always focus on appearance-based compliments. So that's not to say we shouldn't ever tell our young people that they look nice. If we did that, they'd probably take that the wrong way if we suddenly stop telling people they look nice. But our suggestion is to experiment. So suggesting to parents, see what happens when you tell your teen what a wonderful friend they are, or what a helpful person they are, and why you've seen them as so helpful. You know, you helped me with this task and I really needed help, and you noticed that and you helped me, and see how they respond. And then give a appearance-based compliment like, oh, I like how your hair looks today, or you're so pretty, and see how they react to that. And actually we do see a different reaction in young people when we give different types of compliments. So we encourage parents to notice that difference and use the character-based compliments that they can grow over time. Don'tcompare.com is a play on words for familiarity's sake, and it reminds parents that both positive and negative comparisons of our children against other children or other people can lead them to develop that habitual comparison feedback loop. So rather than seeing others in their own right for what they are and seeing ourselves in our own right for what we are as unique and individual each, the habit of only ever seeing ourselves in comparison with others can often be started in the home context when parents inadvertently or sometimes unintentionally compare their children to other people, even positively. So for example, a child might say, oh, her skin is so perfect. And a parent might say, well, you have lovely skin too. That's well-intentioned as an attempt to reassure the child, but is actually causing this comparative feedback loop as a normal thing for the child to do, and that create a lifelong habit. So moving quickly on to tip number 3, not all filters are equal. And this just highlights to parents that to notice if their child is using image enhancing types of filters to change their natural appearance with all of their photos, and that may be an indicator that they're concerned about their image. So some filters, for example, mirror what cosmetic treatments can offer. So fuller lips, lifted brows, smooth as silk skin, that kind of look. Whereas other filters are clearly designed to be funny and are just playful. So encouraging young people and children to use more of those humorous filters if they do like using filters, and even doing a fun photo shoot together with kids and creating those memories. A bonus tip we give for parents is don't then go posting those funny photos on your social media, because then we're creating more of a problem for the young people and additional anxieties for them. Tip 4 reminds parents that our own body image concerns can mirror and filter down to our children, kind of like what the research I highlighted before shows, that we need to model that positive self-talk. And lastly, the final tip is on treatments and surgeries, and just highlighting for parents that this is prevalent. It is increasingly an option for young people that they are considering. And so we give parents some tips and strategies for how they might start that conversation with their children to non-judgmentally explore some of the risks, the safety measures and costs after care if their child seems to be considering any kinds of treatments for child or young person. So lastly, there was a guidance for adults as well that was more focused on mature adults, that was derived from the body image report as well as from our 2021 survey of the Open Network. And this included tips to improve body image as well as some bonus tips for promoting self-care, again, highlighting that enjoyment and appreciation factor rather than appearance-based factors. We present some stats and prevalence to help people understand how normal it is and how important it is to look after a body image, because it is something that affects many people's mental health. Adults are sort of guided through the factors that impact their body image, and we conclude by making informed decisions and what to look for if an adult is considering cosmetic treatments, whether surgical or non-surgical. So how did the campaign perform? I'm going to hand over to Tyra to give an overview on some responses to the Mind Over Mirror campaign. Tyra, do you want to take over?
Thank you, Katrina. It was great to see the foundation received overwhelmingly positive feedback, with many people contacting us directly to share their personal struggles with body image. I had a friend actually reach out to me and say that she read my blog, and the day that she read my blog, she said she was actually struggling with her acne that day and she was struggling to get out of the house, but it was really helpful and motivating for her to see someone else go through a similar struggle. And this campaign raised the bar for how we discuss the reality of body image in light of cosmetic treatments, image editing apps, and changing societal norms. And these are some quotes from the Instagram posts that form part of this campaign. You can read them on the screen. And the foundation used both organic posts and targeted advertisements to ensure we reach both a broad audience and those specific groups that the content was co-created with and for. And the campaign ran across Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, as well as mainstream news media, and was disseminated through our stakeholder networks and partners, such as the British Beauty Council's network of cosmetic providers. Some of this content will also be available on the website for customers of the Joint Council for Cosmetic Practitioners. These posts reached about 60,000 people in the first few weeks, and across the various pieces of content achieved more than 2 million impressions in the first 2 weeks. Almost 2,000 downloads of the content resulted from this reach, with over 30,000 individuals visiting the pages on our website, which seemed to have been resulting from the targeted ad campaign. This means it was our targeted audiences who visited Mhcf pages for more information and resources after viewing the social media content. This was really great to see, as we did all of this with a very small budget. I'll hand over back to Katrina to end.
So yes, just to wrap up, the Mental Health Foundation continues to build upon our work across schools, digital platforms, homes and communities, and in the policy and industry sectors to raise awareness of what works to promote healthy body image. We need to continue to use the latest evidence to inform our practice, policies, and processes, updating as we go along and in response to the ever-changing digital world and the wider cultural changes. And this requires a recognition of risk factors, but also building protective factors, particularly for those who are most vulnerable to seeing the impacts on their quality of life and their mental health outcomes, which can result from body image concerns. So by working in this multi-strand way, as the Foundation does, we can address this incredibly common concern amongst all levels of the population. Fundamental to this is contributing to enable an informed society made up of individuals who have the information that they need to make the best decisions for themselves without being swayed or pressured by emotional stress, societal expectations, whether perceived or actual, or fear. So this is the only way to make sound judgments about how to safeguard our own body image in ways that work uniquely to each of us, responding to our individuality as well we should. Now, as the statistics plainly show, we must address this falsehood that the value of ourselves can ever depend on how we look. Now, sadly, in our 2019 survey, almost 1/3 of our sample said that they go through life holding this belief that their value as a person depends on how they look. So as such, the need for change continues to be evident. And as we go forward, let's see the impact of our work to make positive change be evident also. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tyra and Katrina. Thank you very much. Such a rich and powerful presentation. Such a wide range of issues. Really, so many questions can be asked, and I'm sort of slightly cautious because I know that we are really running behind. But maybe after our next speaker will have an opportunity to speak, we can then open the floor and ask more questions.